Hello, hello.
Banging.
And signature, right?
Yep. And can you get left in?
Lancaster.
Perfect.
Thank you.
It's a lot lighter than it looks.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.
Something you bought?
Yep.
Don't wait until tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to Lancaster Hi-Fi. I'm Stephen Lancaster. Well, I went and done it this time. I bought myself an Audio Research LS15. Yeah, this is the original box. So we got two boxes, one just tubes. This is a very light box, as you might imagine. 4 tubes, each in its own box and bubble wrap. This in the original Audio Research box. Okay, let's see if I can get this out of here. I mean, I'm sure I can. Just nice original owner's manual. And oh my. So double boxed. Nah, triple boxed. There's another box inside here. Another card from the music room. Very interesting. So it's like rack mounted within here. You can see it's got, first I was like, wait, there's no, why didn't they put any additional packaging below it and in front of it? But this cardboard here is holding that faceplate, and this is meant to be able at least to be rack mounted, so that faceplate is sturdy enough to take the weight. That is, not sure how it was originally packaged. Now all I gotta do is slide it up out of there. There we go. Oh yeah, here we go. Model LS15, high definition. Okay, along with my old McIntosh box, this is one of those boxes and sets of packaging that one keeps somewhere. Oh, you know what? I bet this is even the original plastic bag. I better put that in with the rest of the packaging. Obviously, I don't know that for a fact, but it doesn't seem like new plastic. I don't know though. But, you know, it's something that I would have kept if it were me. Wow. So, you can see pretty well through the top grate. And simple, elegant front. And around back, of course, we got the nice handles around back. Uh-oh. Better figure out what that is. Around back, we've got nice RCA connectors as well as some XLR connectors, both. Right, so we've got XLR outputs and RCA outputs, and we've got mostly RCA inputs and XLR inputs. So the thing rattling around is just one of these little stops that appears not to be actually broken, so that's cool. I've already given it a listen, particularly in comparison to a recently acquired and quick refurbed McIntosh C28. I haven't listened to it in my main listening system here in my office. I have just done a first in comparison listen to the system with my Fisher CC3000. And I've been pleased with this preamp. It's nice. But I've also been thinking that my system would benefit from a reference level tube preamp. And that's what this is. This is a line level, so LS15. It is a line level preamp. It means I can use my phono preamp, and I'll show you the back panel. It has both balanced and RCA, or both XLR and RCA inputs and outputs. I don't have any balanced connection devices, so I'll just be using the RCA for now. But that is nice that it gives me an upgrade path. If I upgrade something to a balanced piece of equipment, whether a power amp or preamp or phono stage, say, or whatever, then I can still keep and use this preamp. I've got 3 preamps in frame here. Got the McIntosh C28, the Phase Linear 2000, and the Audio Research LS15. Now, what are the relative merits of these 3? Well, the McIntosh and the Phase Linear sure do have some special beauty to them. But, let's not concentrate on that for now. The Phase Linear is just not even really part of a discussion that includes the other 2. I mean, okay, I've made it that, but it's a chip preamp. It's not bad. It's just not in the same league. So what about the LS15 versus the McIntosh C28? These are both serious preamps. Well, one obvious place to start is always the back panel. What's your back panel look like? What are your options back here? Well, first let's look at that McIntosh. These RCA jacks are jacked. They are old and tarnished. They weren't like a particularly nice metal to begin with. And they're also not easily replaceable. They are mounted to that bulkhead in a way that I can't figure out how I would get them off if I wanted to replace them. If we go back to the Phase Linear, I did replace all of those RCA jacks. That was a pain. Involved a lot of soldering because the original jacks were soldered to the circuit board. But it was doable. It wasn't that hard to take them out. If we look at the acoustic research now, we see we've got RCA jacks that could be replaced, and you can tell because of the hex bolt, or the hex nuts there. We've also got essentially an upgrade path on the back here in the form of balanced inputs and balanced outputs. So I don't have any gear right now that has balanced outputs or inputs, but when I do, I can use this preamp. And that's a nice thing. Now, we've also got, just starting out the gate, we've got gold-plated RCA jacks. We've got gold-plated pin receptacles on these balanced inputs. And we've got gold-plated pins on the balanced outputs. And that's a big difference between the Audio Research and the McIntosh. And again, the McIntosh, I don't want to mess with trying to replace those. It's not a simple task. Maybe it's not that hard. I should look into it, but it doesn't look simple at the outset. Those those jacks are not made to be removed. It comes with a remote. And then I'm like, wait, it's supposed to have a remote. There. Okay, so we got the remote and the power cord and even a pair of batteries. How thoughtful. Which I expect will also increase my quality of life, because I'll be able to play with the volume and such from the listening position. And that's nice to be able to do. Especially when you run a YouTube channel and, you know, you want to stay in that sweet spot while you try different stuff, I guess. I mean, oh yeah, I can even change the source with this. Where to begin? I've been looking for a preamp for a while. And if you're at all familiar with my channel, then you know that already. Why this one? You know, it was something that I could afford. I found it on the Music Room Audio. Let's see. Just give them a little plug for the heck of it. It came with the remote. It came with the manual, and there's other documentation in here as well. It looks like the sort of flyer from where it was originally purchased. So nice. And the Music Room also provides a checklist. You know, it's been checked over. In this case, just to make sure that everything is in there. What is this? Quality Assurance Certificate. Circuit board inspection, main board assembly inspection, small board assembly inspection, power supply test, performance preliminary test. In process, final assembly inspection, final wiring, soldering inspection, final appearance inspection, and then under performance, a preliminary test, a test run, final test, listening test, and packaging, panel covers, feet, instructions, warranty, fuses, accessories, if any. Nice. It's got the model number, serial number, so I have some assurance. The Music Room offers a 30-day, no questions asked return. I'm already over 2 weeks into that because I went out of town. But I did listen to this the day I got it because I was leaving town for 2 weeks the next day, and I just wanted to make sure that it worked out of the box. To describe all my longing for love. But I haven't given it much listening. I've given it enough listening to say that I prefer it to the McIntosh C28. And now I'm going to see whether I do actually prefer it to the Fisher CC3000. Now, I don't know whether to expect a big difference between the two, so we'll see. I'm just kind of excited to have this. What more can I say about it at this point? Oh, it's a computer-controlled or digitally controlled stepped attenuator volume. So that's not a volume knob in the traditional sense. It's simply a decrementer and an incrementer. All of these switches are not actual toggles as much as they're essentially like push buttons. And similarly, this is a decrementer, incrementer. And that means that the remote can do these things as easily as the front panel controls. let me give you my preliminary impressions of this relative to the McIntosh C28. The McIntosh C28 has a distinctive sound, and I did an I did a full-on gain versus frequency test for the McIntosh C28 because I was particularly curious about whether what I thought I was hearing was reflected in measurements. Because what I heard was that, for things that had and relied on a really powerful high end, the McIntosh seemed to sound a bit muted.
To describe all my longing for love. To describe all my longing for love.
And that's particularly when I was listening to the Scorpions. It sounded a bit muted. It didn't sound like I'm used to it sounding. You could always say you're not used to listening to it with a McIntosh, and the McIntosh is superior. But I was pretty sure that was not the issue. And indeed, the measurements showed that it, whereas it comes up and is pretty flat up to just like 200 hertz, it actually starts falling off about a dB total between where it's, at 1 to 200 hertz, where it's highest gain, to its lowest point at 20 kilohertz or 21 kilohertz in the case of my measurements. I didn't hear any of that with this. Everything just sounded like it was there, it was right, and it sounded really good. The McIntosh sounded good with Seal. This sounded good with Seal too. So my feeling is that this is a reference level preamp. If there is any coloration to the sound, it's not noticeable by me anyway, except in that it sounds really good. So it has a good sound coloration, if you will. Soundstage. Effervescence. Sparkly brights. Sparkly treble. Bright, but only a good bright. Not overly harsh. No sibilance. Wide open soundstage, even with the speakers right next to each other. Sorry, just gotta play sometimes. Anyway, gonna stick this into the stack. It's, fully vented top and bottom. I'm assuming it should be able to, sit on those feet. Shouldn't need extra space down below. But I'm gonna put it on top of my power amp because it's got tubes and I want to give it lots of air. The power amp I'm using right now is solid state, if you were wondering. So, yeah, let's do this thing. I've got my Rotel RCD855, my Fisher CC3000, and my Adcom GFA 545 Mark II. There's nothing wrong with any of these. Oh, by the way, the WIM Pro Plus over here. There's nothing wrong with anything here. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, you might be going, don't you usually use a tube amp for your power amp? And I would say, yeah, but it was hot. It was hot in here. My tube amps were heating up this small space to an intolerable degree while it was hot outside. I don't have air conditioning, okay? I live in Western Oregon where we don't need air conditioning. So I put in this, and you know, quite pleased with it. It's got a nice sound. And I think it'll be a good power amp with which to listen to any difference we might hear between preamps, namely this Fisher CC3000 and that Audio Research LS15. Now, is there anything wrong with this? No, it's fine. But it's fine. It has actually really nice features. It has phono preamps. It has it can take 2 or 3 turntables because it has 2 moving magnet inputs and 1 moving coil input. I even modified this to use my Riga Affida cartridge, but I'm not using the phono preamp on here. I'm using the i5 phono, the i5 iPhono 2. It's down there behind the turntable. And that's kind of why I went ahead and got that LS15. It's just a line stage. Doesn't have a phono preamp because I'm using a very nice external phono preamp, and I wanted to keep using it. So I'm taking this out. But first, let's just do a quick listen to compare and contrast, you know. What are we getting with that Audio Research? And I think the answer out of the gate is simply, I just expect it to be on a different level. I don't expect it to ever be the weak link in my signal chain. Not that there's anything particularly wrong with this preamp, but you know, maybe some of the things I'm not hearing, such as platter mats and whatnot, might have to do with the preamp. But you know, it's a nice preamp, and I've put some work into it, so I don't want to. I don't know actually whether to expect to hear any kind of difference, and I probably won't hear a dramatic one if I do hear a difference. So let's check it out. I'll use the WIM as my source for this. I've queued up something that I've been listening to a lot lately. That's a FLAC rip of that Chris, Hi-Fi Chris. What should I call him? Just Chris? Hi-Fi Chris? Awesome rip and awesome sound. Hard for me to stop listening. I only meant to play the first track, but that second track is just dang. So, time to put the new preamp in. Now, you might have noticed there's not a lot of room up there. It'll fit, I'm pretty sure, but you know, it's going to be kind of tight. And I haven't even figured out how it'll go with some of the tube amps that I use up in that space. So maybe it's a good thing that I've got the solid state power amp up there and I can put the preamp on top of that. Now, just FYI, that's not, and I know it, that's not the ideal sort of placement for preamp and power amp. Ideally, there would be more space between the two, but you can see I don't have a whole lot of space to work with unless I move some stuff off of those shelves. All right, now we've got it hooked up. Got the one LED on that is for power on. There's 3 other switches that matter there. The second switch is for mute, and it automatically mutes on power on. The next one is monitor or source. And we want it on source, and then the final one is direct or source. And the direct is one of the balanced inputs, and so we want it on, we don't want that LED lit up. And so I think we should get some sound right now. I did it again. Had to finally remind myself that wow, just sounded. Now, I think I had the volume a bit louder, but that just sounded amazing. I'm not disappointed.
You could be from Venus. You could be from Venus. Love us forever. Love us forever. We would be together. We would be together.
Well, I'm really pleased with how it sounds. Obviously, I had to move some stuff around. It's just a little bit too tall to fit under that vent there. Oh well. You know, had to pull some books out. I'll figure it out. But I'm pretty pleased with how it sounds. I'm trying to recall now, like, why did I have it so far over there in the first place? I think it was to make sure that the preamp or whatever was within range of the captured cord RCA cables on my turntable. Since I made new cables, they're plenty long, no problem reaching over as far as I need to. Now, if I were to put the preamp like all the way over here, maybe that would be an issue, but in that location we're fine. You know, I probably said it's not totally optimal to have the preamp sitting right on top of the power amp. I get it. But clearly I've got a space limitation, so it is what it needs to be. Yeah, I mean, so between the Fisher and this, you know, there was a bit of time, and I think probably I was playing it louder with the audio research, but well, anyway, it sounded great. It sounded totally awesome. I'm trying to think, like, are there particular things that I noticed relative to the first time? And I kind of felt like I didn't need to reach in and try to notice the details in that mix or those mixes of those two songs. What I really did notice in that second song, Cherry Blossom Girl, the flute, you know, sounded like a flute. And it probably sounded like a flute with the other preamp as well, but I just, you know, I felt like I caught all the nuances, the timbre of the flute that it was so very fluty relative to just being a flute sound, if that makes any sense. You know, soundstage opened up, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, sounded good. You know, just more good music sound. Part of that's probably I had it a bit louder. So, subjective test, 2 songs. Obviously, I'll be listening to this a lot more in the coming days to make sure that I don't want to return it within the 30-day no questions asked return period that the Music Room Audio offers. I don't think I'm going to want to return it. I don't know what it could do other than just like blow up. That would make me not want to have it right now. Just sounds awesome. So I'm pretty psyched about that, as you might imagine. You know, I've kind of been thinking that the preamp was, I don't know if that's the weakest link, you know, the weakest link in this room might be the speaker placement and the listening position placement, you know, just the limitations of the space. But I had the feeling that past that, you know, having put in nice new cables in the signal path, that probably the preamp was the limiting factor. And now I feel like, you know, for example, if and when I want to try, you know, put one of my tube amps back in place of that solid state power amp, and whatever tube amps, since I like building tube amps, that this will let me hear subtle differences between those different power amplifiers. It's not going to get in the way of the sound. And that's, you know, that's really what you want out of a good preamp, a line stage. You want it to get out of the way. You know, part of tubes, and I think part of why tube amps and tube preamps, I don't know, but I think part of why they might sound better is there's fewer tubes in a preamp than would be transistors in a solid state preamp, because tubes are expensive, and so the circuit has to be more economical in its use of tubes over transistors. And that just puts fewer stages in the signal path. Maybe I'm full of it on that. Maybe that has nothing to do with it, but I think that is, at least conceptually, part of the appeal of tubes, is that fewer components in the signal path. Because it might also simply be that we like the sound that tubes make, and we like it better than the sound of transistors. Or it could be we just think tubes are cool, and we like tubes, and that they don't really sound better than transistors. Honestly, perfectly honestly, I don't know. I think I've heard a difference with tubes. And I think I've heard a difference among tubes when tube rolling with one of my amps. So I think the sound that the tubes make is a real difference. But But I don't know for sure that a well-designed, economical, you know, in terms of number of components, solid-state amp, you know, perhaps made with FETs rather than BJTs, that is, field effect transistors rather than bipolar junction transistors, that a FET amp might sound as good as a tube amp, given the same sort of design philosophy that tends to go along with tubes in terms of being economical in number of components, because tubes are expensive. So, all that just said, I like my new preamp, and I was pretty sure I would, just having listened to it a little bit already. Yeah, I recommend it. It's I mean, it's audio research, you know, it's hard to go too wrong with audio research, but you know, there are levels within audio research gear. This is not a top of the line. It's also pretty old. I think it's almost 30 years old. I think this is a 1996 model. So, you know, I think it just does seem likely to me that a brand new audio research, top of the line tube audio research preamp is probably going to sound better. I don't know. Maybe I'll take it up to Chris's at some point and try swapping it in place of his audio research preamp. But yeah, I'm pretty psyched. Well, I hope you're psyched too with your own system. You know, partly this video is just about audio joy, you know. I got a new toy. Yay. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it. Hope you maybe got a bit out of, you know, my comparison with the McIntosh C28. And if you want to know more about the McIntosh C28, my previous video, I think it's going to be my previous video, is on that preamp. And why, especially in comparison with this one, this is the keeper, for sure. It's not even a close call. Not to mention I would have even harder time fitting that Mac up there. Whatever. If you like the video, you got something out of it, do the algorithm stuff, subscribe, like, leave a comment, hype. But mostly I hope you tune in again, and if you do, I will talk to you later. Cheers.